They said Vincent Caruso turned to stone the night his wife died. 30 years of silence, not a single word to his son, his
I
business
see
partners,
now.
or the world that once hung
This
on his every
changes
command.
things.
The shipping magnate who built an empire from nothing had simply stopped speaking, as if language itself had betrayed him. But on this Thanksgiving night in 2024, a young waitress with a $5 pendant around her neck would say one word in a dialect older than America itself, and that word would shatter 3 decades of grief. This is a story about what we lose when we stop talking, and what we find when we finally break the silence. November 1994, 30 years earlier. The yacht rocked gently on Long Island Sound, its white hull gleaming under the harvest moon. Inside the cabin, crystal glasses caught the candlelight, casting amber shadows across the polished mahogany table. This was the Caruso family celebrating Thanksgiving the way wealthy families do, with imported wine and carefully plated courses that looked more like art than food. Vincent Caruso stood at 48 years old, his dark hair just beginning to silver at the temples. He wore a cashmere sweater his wife had bought him, though he'd complained about the price. Isabella sat across from him, still beautiful at 45. Her laugh lines deeper now, but her eyes bright with the same fire that had made him fall in love with her 20 years ago on the docks of Brooklyn. Their son, Marcus, just 15, had excused himself to the upper deck. He'd won the state science fair that week, and Vincent had promised him they'd celebrate properly. But Vincent's phone kept ringing. The Hong Kong deal, the shipping lanes, the numbers that
I
never
see
stopped
now.
demanding his attention.
This changes
Isabella
things.
was watching him. Vincent could feel her gaze even as he pretended to study the wine in his glass. "Put it down," she said quietly. Vincent looked up. "What?" "The phone, put it down. It's Thanksgiving." "Isabella, this deal is worth $12 million. I just need to—" "What about us?" Her voice was soft, but there was steel underneath. "Are we worth $12 million? Vincent set his glass down harder than he meant to. Red wine sloshed over the rim, staining the white tablecloth like blood. "Everything I do is for you, for Marcus. You think this empire built itself?" "I didn't ask for an empire, Vincent." Isabella's hands were trembling now. In 20 years of marriage, they'd never fought. Not really, not like this. "I asked for a husband. I asked for a father who comes home before his son goes to sleep." "You have everything you could want." Vincent heard his voice rising, heard it echoing in the small cabin. "This boat, the house, the cars, Marcus's private school. I want you." Isabella stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Not your money, not your empire. You, the man I married. The boy from Sicily who used to steal bread from the bakery and share it with me in the alley." Vincent's phone buzzed again. Hong Kong. He glanced at it. That glance was all it took. Isabella turned away, tears streaming down her face. She grabbed her coat and headed for the deck. Vincent let her go.
I see now.
He needed to take this call.
This changes
Just 5
things.
minutes. Then he'd go apologize, make it right, explain that the pressure was temporary, that once this deal closed, everything would be better. 5 minutes became 10, 10 became 15. Outside, the wind was picking up. The calm November evening had turned choppy. Vincent finally pocketed his phone and climbed to the upper deck. Marcus was there, headphones on, staring at the stars, but Isabella was nowhere to be seen. "Where's your mother?" Marcus pulled off his headphones. "She went to the back deck. She was crying. Dad, what did you—" Vincent didn't wait for the rest. He rushed to the stern, his heart suddenly pounding in a way that had nothing to do with business or deals or money. Isabella was standing at the rail, her coat whipping in the wind. The water below was black and churning. "Isabella, come inside. The weather's turning." She didn't turn around. "I can't do this anymore, Vincent. I can't be married to a ghost." "What are you talking about? I'm right here." "No." She finally looked at him, and the pain in her eyes cut deeper than any words. "You left me years ago. You just forgot to move out." A wave hit the side of the yacht, larger than the others. The deck lurched violently. Isabella grabbed for the rail, but her hands were wet from spray, and the metal was slick. And Vincent watched in horror as her feet slipped out from under her. She fell backward, her eyes wide with shock, her mouth forming
I
his
see
name.
now.
Vincent lunged forward,
This changes
his hand
things.
outstretched, his fingers brushing the sleeve of her coat. But he was too late, too slow. too focused on everything except what mattered. Isabella hit the dark water with a sound Vincent would hear in his nightmares for the rest of his life. He dove in after her. The cold was a knife to his chest, stealing his breath. He could see her coat, just below the surface, her dark hair floating like seaweed. He grabbed her, pulled her up, held her face above the water. Isabella, Isabella, stay with me. But her eyes were already vacant. The back of her head was bleeding where she'd struck the hull on the way down. The water around them turned pink, then red, then black as the current pulled them both under. Marcus threw the life preserver. The Coast Guard arrived 18 minutes later. They pulled Vincent and Isabella's body from the water and wrapped them both in silver blankets that looked like burial shrouds in the moonlight. Vincent held his wife's hand all the way back to shore. Her skin was cold. Her wedding ring caught the lights from the rescue boat, glinting like a promise that had been broken. The last words Vincent Caruso ever spoke were in that moment, holding his dead wife, rocking back and forth as his teenage son sobbed into his hands. I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. After that, silence. The alarm screamed at 5:30 in the morning, but Emma Russo was already awake. She'd been staring at the water stain on her ceiling for the past hour, doing math in her head.
I see now.
Math that never came out
This
right no matter
changes
how many
things.
times she rearranged the numbers. Rent, $2,200. 2 months overdue. That was $4,400. Medical bills for Lily's treatment, $8,000 and climbing. Utilities, $340 past due. Her phone sat on the milk crate that served as a nightstand. It screened dark but threatening. She knew if she turned it on, there would be texts from the hospital billing department, from her landlord, from the daycare. Everyone wanted their money. Everyone deserved their money. She just didn't have it. In the corner of the studio apartment, Lily slept on the pull-out couch, her small body curled around a threadbare teddy bear that had been Emma's when she was a child. 5 years old, and she'd never had her own bedroom. Never had new clothes that weren't from the thrift store. Never had the childhood that Emma had dreamed of giving her. Emma sat up slowly, careful not to wake her daughter. The apartment was cold. She'd turned the heat down to save money, and now her breath misted in the gray morning light. Through the thin walls, she could hear Mrs. Chen next door, already up and making breakfast. The smell of congee and scallions drifted through the air vents, making Emma's stomach clench with hunger. She hadn't eaten dinner last night, or lunch. The food money had gone to buy Lily new shoes because the old ones had holes in the soles, and she couldn't send her daughter to daycare with wet feet. Emma moved to the tiny kitchenette and filled the coffee maker with water. While it dripped and hissed, she looked at the bills spread across the kitchen table like an accusation. On top of the pile was the eviction notice, bold red letters, December 15th, less than 3 weeks away. If we're evicted, where do we go? She whispered to herself. A shelter? My car? Mrs. Chen's couch? She touched the pendant at her throat. Gold, worn smooth from decades of handling. The crest was barely visible now, but she knew what it showed. Santi Poveri, the patron saints of the poor, the saints of laborers, of immigrants, of people who had nothing except their dignity and their will to survive. Nonna Maria had given her this pendant 10 years ago, a week before she died. This will guide you, Bella, the old woman had said, her voice papery with age. When you need it most, this will show you the way home. Emma had asked what that meant, but Nonna had only smiled and squeezed her hand. Now, standing in her freezing apartment, with eviction papers on the table and a sleeping child in the corner, Emma wondered if Nonna's promise had been just the confused rambling of a dying woman. There was no way home. There was only forward, one day at a time, one shift at a time, hoping that somehow the numbers would add up differently. Behind her, Lily stirred. Mommy? Emma turned, forcing a smile onto her face. Good morning, baby. Happy Thanksgiving. Lily sat up, rubbing her eyes. She was small for 5 years old, delicate like a bird. The rare condition that kept landing them in the hospital had stolen her childhood vigor, but her spirit remained unbroken. She smiled at Emma with the pure trust that only children possess. Are we having turkey today? Emma's heart cracked a little. We're going to the church dinner, remember? They'll have turkey and everything. Lily's face fell just slightly, so quickly that anyone else might have missed it. But Emma saw. Emma always saw. That sounds nice, Lily said, her voice carefully cheerful. Will there be pie? Probably. Emma came over and sat on the edge of the pullout, gathering her daughter into her arms. Lily smelled like the cheap lavender soap from the dollar store and something sweeter, something indefinable. The smell of childhood, the smell of innocence. And you know what? After my shift tonight, I'm going to bring you home some special food from the restaurant. Deal? Deal, Lily hugged her tight. Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to be rich, and I'm going to buy you a big house with heat that works. Emma held her daughter and tried not to cry. You're already the richest thing I've ever had, sweetheart. That doesn't make sense. Lily pulled back, frowning in that serious way children do when adults say something illogical. It does when you're a mom. They got ready in the cramped bathroom, Lily chattering about school and her friend Sophie, who had the same birthday as her, and how they were practically twins even though Sophie had dark hair and Lily was blonde. Emma half listened, focusing on getting her daughter clean and dressed and ready for the day. The daycare was 6 blocks away. Emma carried Lily on her back because the sidewalks were icy and Lily's new shoes didn't have good traction yet. Mrs. Chen stood in the doorway of the daycare center with that look on her face. The sympathetic look. The look that said she understood, but also there were limits. Emma, Mrs. Chen's voice was gentle, about December's payment. I know, I'm sorry, I'll have it next week, I promise. It's $800, and you still owe $400 from November. $1,200, added to the pile. Please, Mrs. Chen. Emma set Lily down but held her hand tight. She has nowhere else to go. I'm working tonight. Double shift. The tips should be good because of Thanksgiving. Mrs. Chen looked at Lily, who was staring up at both of them with wise, understanding eyes. Children always knew when adults were talking about money. They could feel the tension in the air like a coming storm. January 1st, Mrs. Chen said finally. You have until then. But Emma, if you can't pay by then... I will, thank you. Thank you so much. Emma knelt down and hugged Lily one more time. Be good, okay? I love you. I love you more than the whole world, Mommy. The subway to Manhattan took 45 minutes. Emma stood the whole way, holding onto the pole and watching the city blur past the windows. She thought about Nonna Maria, the way she used to whenever things got hard. Nonna had lived next door to Emma's mother in a tenement building in Bensonhurst. When Emma's father left before she was born, and her mother worked 3 jobs just to keep them fed, Nonna Maria had become Emma's real parent, the old woman from Sicily with her thick accent and her strong hands and her kitchen that always smelled like garlic and tomatoes. Come, Bella, Nonna would say, pulling Emma into her tiny apartment. I teach you to cook. And Emma had learned, not just recipes, but philosophy. The way Nonna touched food was reverent. Every ingredient was precious. Nothing could be wasted. The bread that was too stale to eat became breadcrumbs. The vegetable scraps became stock. Even the act of wiping out a bowl with bread had a name in the old dialect. Scarpetta, the little shoe, walking through the sauce to honor every drop. In the village, we had nothing, Nonna had told her once, her gnarled fingers teaching Emma how to knead dough. But we had dignity. We had each other. And we made every meal a prayer. Emma's mother had died 2 years ago from cancer. The medical bills from that had created the debt that Emma was still drowning in. But before she died, she'd made Emma promise something. Ask Nonna about your father, her mother had whispered from the hospital bed. She knows. She never told me everything, but she knows. Emma had tried, but Nonna Maria had died a week later, taking whatever secrets she had to her grave. All she'd left was the pendant and those cryptic final words about finding home. The subway screeched to a halt at Canal Street. Emma got off and walked the final 6 blocks to the Winter Garden restaurant, her breath misting in the cold November air. Manhattan was beautiful in a way that made her chest ache. All the buildings lit up, all the people in their expensive coats, all the warmth and wealth that seemed to exist in a different dimension from her own life. The Winter Garden sat on the ground floor of a building that probably cost more than Emma would make in 10 lifetimes. Even the entrance was intimidating. Tall glass doors, a doorman in a uniform that looked like it cost more than her monthly rent. Through the windows, Emma could see the interior. White tablecloths, crystal chandeliers. The kind of place where appetizers cost $50 and the wine list had prices that made her dizzy. She went around back to the service entrance, a plain metal door in an alley that smelled like garbage and yesterday's cooking oil. Richard Hawthorne was waiting for her just inside. Richard was 52 years old and looked like a man who'd spent his whole life being angry about something. His suit was too tight across the shoulders. His cologne was too strong. His smile never reached his eyes. He'd been the floor manager at the Winter Garden for 15 years, and in that time he'd perfected the art of making people feel small. "You're late, Boss Russo." Emma glanced at the clock on the wall. 5:58. Her shift started at 6. "I'm 2 minutes early." "Early is on time. On time is late. Haven't you learned that by now?" Richard's eyes traveled over her uniform, looking for imperfections. "Your apron is wrinkled." "I'll iron it." "See that you do. Tonight is not a night for your usual mediocrity. We have a code black reservation." Emma's stomach dropped. Code black meant VIP, the kind of VIP who could end careers with a single complaint, the kind who made grown men nervous and experienced waiters call in sick. "Who?" she asked. Richard's smile widened. He was enjoying this. "Vincent Caruso, the Stone himself." The name meant nothing to Emma, but clearly it should have. Around her, the other staff members who'd been preparing for the evening shift went very still. Someone actually gasped. "I don't understand," Emma said. "Of course you don't." Richard leaned in close enough that she could smell coffee on his breath. "Vincent Caruso owns half the real estate in Manhattan. He's worth $8 billion, and he hasn't spoken a word in 30 years, not since his wife died. The last 3 restaurants he visited, he had staff fired just for breathing wrong. And tonight, for the first time in 5 years, he's coming here for Thanksgiving dinner with his son." Emma's hand started to shake. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're serving them." "What?" "Number Richard, I'm junior staff. I've only been here 4 months. I can't." "You will." Richard straightened his tie. "Everyone else refused. They're too scared. So congratulations, Russo. You get to be our sacrificial lamb. And if anything goes wrong, if you spill water, if you breathe too loud, if you exist in a way that displeases Vincent Caruso, you're not just fired. You're blacklisted. No restaurant in Manhattan will touch you. Do you understand?" Emma understood. She understood that she was trapped. She understood that refusing meant getting fired right now, losing today's tips, losing any chance of making December's rent. She understood that Richard had set her up to fail because that's what men like Richard did to women like her. "I understand," she said quietly. "Good. Now go fix that apron." In a glass and steel office building 12 blocks away, Marcus Caruso stared at spreadsheets and tried not to think about the phone call he'd just received. His office was on the 42nd floor, with windows that overlooked all of Manhattan. From here, the city looked like a circuit board, all lights and energy and infinite possibility. Marcus had built Caruso Tech from nothing after his wife died, throwing himself into work the way drowning men throw themselves at life preservers. The company was now worth $3 billion. They had contracts with the Pentagon, with NASA, with every Fortune 500 company that needed cutting-edge artificial intelligence. And in 6 weeks, if Marcus didn't figure out a way to stop it, a hostile competitor was going to take it all away. "The numbers don't lie," David Chen said from the chair across from Marcus's desk. David was his CFO and his closest friend, a 42-year-old with silver streaking his black hair and permanent worry lines around his eyes. "Tech Venture has 30% of our shares. They're buying more every day. Once they hit 51%, it's over." "How long do we have?" 6 weeks, maybe 8 if we're lucky." Marcus rubbed his temples. A headache was building behind his eyes, the kind that no amount of aspirin could touch. "My father built an empire from nothing. A kid from Sicily who came to America with holes in his shoes and turned himself into a shipping magnate. And I'm about to lose everything in less than a decade. You built this company after Jennifer died, while raising Sophie alone, while dealing with your father's—" David trailed off, looking for the right word. "Silence? I was going to say grief, but yeah." Marcus turned to look out the window. Somewhere out there, his father was sitting in the Fifth Avenue mansion, probably staring at nothing, existing in that gray space between living and dying that he'd occupied for 30 years. And somewhere else, his daughter Sophie was with her nanny, getting ready for the Thanksgiving dinner that Marcus had promised to attend, but was already thinking of ways to avoid. His desk phone buzzed. The receptionist's voice came through, carefully neutral. "Mr. Caruso, there's a call from Victoria Hastings." Marcus's chest tightened. "Tell her I'm in a meeting." "She said it's urgent, regarding Sophie." Of course it was. It was always about Sophie. Marcus picked up the phone. "Victoria." "Marcus." Victoria Hastings' voice was cold and cultured, every word precisely enunciated. She was 68 years old, a Boston socialite who'd never forgiven Marcus for not being good enough for her daughter. "I'm calling to inform you that I've filed a petition with family court." "A petition for what?" "Custody of Sophie. I'm seeking primary guardianship." The office seemed to tilt. Marcus gripped the edge of his desk. "You're doing what?" "My granddaughter deserves better than what you're providing. You're never home. You work 18-hour days. You're so consumed with saving your failing company that you don't even know what grade Sophie is in." "She's in first grade." "I know exactly." "Second. She's in second grade, Marcus. She was promoted last month." The words hit like a slap. Sophie was in second grade. How had he missed that? "I'm her father." "You're a workaholic who uses his daughter as an excuse for his own inadequacy." Victoria's voice was sharp enough to cut. "Jennifer would be ashamed of you. The custody hearing is January 5th. I suggest you get a good lawyer. You're going to need one." The line went dead. Marcus sat there holding the phone, feeling the walls of his carefully constructed life collapse around him. David was watching him with that expression of helpless sympathy that Marcus had seen too often in the 3 years since Jennifer died. "She's going for custody?" David asked quietly. "January 5th. Can she win?" Marcus set the phone down carefully. "I don't know, maybe. Probably. She has grounds. I haven't been father of the year." "You've been grieving. That's normal." "Sophie doesn't care about normal. She cares about having a parent who's actually there." Marcus turned back to the window, watching the sunset over Manhattan. "Victoria's right about one thing. I have no idea what grade my daughter is in. I can tell you the quarterly earnings of 17 different divisions, but I don't know if Sophie still has nightmares about her mother or what her favorite subject in school is, or—" His voice cracked. He stopped talking. "Marcus." David stood up and came around the desk. "You're doing the best you can." "My best is losing my company and losing my daughter in the same month." Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. "My father stopped talking 30 years ago, and I've been turning into him ever since. Just a different kind of silence." Outside the office, Marcus heard his assistant's voice, then a child's laughter. The door opened, and Sophie came running in, her long dark hair flying behind her, her face bright with the kind of joy that children have before the world teaches them to be careful with their happiness. "Daddy!" Marcus turned just in time to catch her as she launched herself at him. 6 years old and already so much like Jennifer. The same dark eyes, the same quick smile, the same way of tilting her head when she was thinking hard about something. "Hey, princess, what are you doing here?" "Miss Chen brought me. She said you wanted to have dinner with Grandpa Vincent tonight." The nanny appeared in the doorway, apologetic. "I'm sorry, Mr. Caruso. Sophie insisted on coming to tell you herself. She's very excited." Marcus had forgotten. He'd promised Sophie 2 weeks ago that they'd have Thanksgiving dinner with Vincent. It had seemed like a good idea at the time, a way to force himself to spend time with family instead of hiding in spreadsheets. But now, with Victoria's threat hanging over him and the company circling the drain, the last thing he wanted was to sit through an awkward meal watching his father not eat and not speak. Sophie was looking up at him with those eyes, Jennifer's eyes, hopeful and trusting and already starting to show the first hints of doubt that told Marcus his daughter was learning not to believe his promises. "Of course we're still going," Marcus heard himself say. "I made a reservation at the Winter Garden, your grandfather's favorite." Sophie's whole face lit up. "Really? The fancy restaurant with the big windows?" "Really." "And Grandpapa will come?" He said yes. Marcus hesitated. The truth was he hadn't actually asked his father. He'd had his assistant make the reservation and simply inform Vincent and his staff that they'd be picking him up at 7. Whether Vincent would actually agree to come was anyone's guess. The old man spent most of his days sitting in the library, staring at the fireplace, existing in whatever private hell he'd built for himself after Isabella died. But Sophie was waiting for an answer, and Marcus couldn't bear to disappoint her. Not today, not when Victoria's lawyers were already building their case. "He'll come," Marcus said, "I promise." Sophie hugged him tight, her small arms around his neck. "Thank you, Daddy. Maybe if we're all together, maybe Grandpa will talk to us. Maybe he'll be happy again." Over his daughter's head, Marcus met David's eyes. His friend's expression said what Marcus was thinking. Maybe this dinner was a terrible idea. Maybe forcing a grieving old man and a workaholic father and a lonely little girl into a fancy restaurant on Thanksgiving was just asking for disaster. But Sophie was already chattering about what dress she'd wear and whether Grandpa Vincent would like the drawing she'd made at school, and Marcus didn't have the heart to take this away from her. "Go get ready," he told her. "We leave at 6:30. After Sophie left with the nanny, David cleared his throat. "You know this is going to be a disaster, right?" "Probably. Your father hasn't been to a restaurant in 5 years. The last time he stared at his plate for 2 hours and left without eating. I remember. And now you're taking him to the Winter Garden on their busiest night of the year?" Marcus grabbed his coat from the stand by the door. "What choice do I have, David? Victoria's going for custody. I need to show the court that I'm a family man, that Sophie has a support system, that we're not just two people rattling around in our separate griefs. By dragging your silent father to a fancy restaurant? By trying." Marcus's voice came out harder than he meant to. "For once in 3 years, I'm actually trying to be present for my daughter instead of hiding in this office. Is that so wrong?" David held up his hands. "No, you're right. I'm sorry." Marcus took a breath, forcing himself to calm down. "I'm sorry, too. I know you're just worried." "I am worried about you, about Sophie, about the company, about everything." David picked up his own coat. "But for what it's worth, I think you're doing the right thing. Family first. Always family first. That's easy to say when you don't have Victoria Hastings calling you incompetent." "True." David headed for the door, then paused. "Hey, Marcus, when's the last time you actually talked to your father? Not at him, but with him." Marcus couldn't remember. Every conversation for the past 30 years had been one-sided. Marcus talking, Vincent staring, Marcus asking questions, Vincent giving nothing back. At some point, Marcus had stopped trying. "It's been a while," he admitted. "Maybe tonight's the night something changes. You never know." After David left, Marcus stood alone in his office, watching the city lights flicker on as the sun disappeared behind the buildings. He thought about his mother, the way she used to laugh at his father's terrible jokes, the way she'd dance in the kitchen while cooking, pulling Vincent into her arms until he'd finally give in and spin her around the room, the way she'd believed that love was the most important thing, more important than money or success or any of the things Vincent had been chasing when she died. If she could see them now, she'd be disappointed. A father who didn't speak, a son who didn't listen, a granddaughter growing up in the shadow of two separate kinds of silence. "I'm trying, Mom," Marcus whispered to the empty office. "I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying." The city didn't answer. It never did. At 6:45, as the Thanksgiving dinner rush hit full swing at the Winter Garden, Emma Russo tied her freshly ironed apron and tried to remember how to breathe. The restaurant was chaos disguised as elegance. In the kitchen, Chef Jean-Pierre was screaming at sous chefs in French while they plated turkey that cost $60 a serving. In the dining room, tables were filling up with Manhattan's elite, all dressed in their Thanksgiving finest, all expecting perfection. Richard moved through it all like a shark, his eyes catching every minor imperfection, his voice a constant stream of criticism and commands. Emma watched him berate a busboy for placing a water glass half an inch off center, and she thought about what it must be like to have that much anger living inside you all the time. "Russo," Richard snapped his fingers at her. "Table 1, Vincent Caruso's table. You said it yourself. And if there is a single fingerprint on the stemware, you're done." Table 1 sat in the best position in the restaurant, by the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the street. From there, you could see the lights of Manhattan stretching into the distance, could watch the people hurrying past with shopping bags and children, and that particular energy that Thanksgiving brought to the city. Emma polished each glass twice, holding it up to the light to check for spots. She arranged the silverware with a ruler, making sure every knife and fork was exactly 1 inch from the edge of the table. The white tablecloth was pristine. The flower arrangement in the center was perfect. White roses and autumn leaves that probably cost more than Emma's weekly salary. By the time she finished, her hands were shaking. "It's just dinner," she told herself. "Just take their order, bring their food, stay invisible. You can do this." But invisible was hard when you were terrified. And Emma was terrified. She needed this job, needed these tips, needed to keep showing up and getting paid so she could keep Lily in daycare and keep the lights on and maybe, somehow, stay one step ahead of the eviction notice. At 7:15, the front door opened. Every person in the restaurant felt it. The shift in atmosphere, the way conversations paused mid-sentence and heads turned. The hostess straightened her already perfect posture. Richard appeared from the back, his fake smile plastered on, his hand smoothing his already smooth tie. Marcus Caruso entered first. He was 45 years old and looked like money. Not new money with its flash and desperation, but old money that sat quiet and sure in expensive tailored suits and watches that cost more than cars. He was handsome in a sharp-featured way, with dark hair going silver at the temples, and the kind of lean build that came from having a private gym and a personal trainer. But it was his eyes that caught Emma's attention. Tired eyes, weak eyes that had seen something break and never quite figured out how to fix it. Beside him was a little girl in a dark green velvet dress. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old, with long dark hair and huge eyes that tried to take in everything at once. She held her father's hand tightly, and when she smiled at the hostess, it was the kind of smile that could break hearts. Then came the wheelchair. An attendant pushed it through the door, moving carefully over the threshold. And in that wheelchair sat Vincent Caruso. Emma had expected someone imposing, someone whose $8 billion and legendary reputation would be visible in every line of his face. Instead, she saw a small man, shrunk by age and grief, his expensive suit hanging loose on a frame that looked like it had forgotten how to carry weight. But his eyes. Even from across the restaurant, Emma could see those eyes. Gray as winter storms, sharp as broken glass. Eyes that looked at the world and found it wanting. The entire dining room had gone quiet. People weren't even pretending not to stare. This was Vincent Caruso, the stone, the man who hadn't spoken in 30 years. And he was here in their restaurant on Thanksgiving night. Richard practically ran to meet them. "Mr. Caruso, what an honor. What an absolute honor to have you here at the Winter Garden." Vincent didn't even glance at him. His eyes were fixed on some point in the middle distance, as if he was looking through the restaurant to something only he could see. Marcus put a hand on his son's shoulder. His voice was low, almost apologetic. "Table for 3, please." Under Caruso. "Of course! Right this way! Your table is ready!" Richard led them across the restaurant, past all the staring diners, past the other waiters who had backed away from table 1 like it was radioactive. Emma stood by the service station, her heart hammering against her ribs. Sophie, the little girl, was looking around with wide eyes. "Daddy, it's so pretty. Look at the lights." "I see them, princess." They reached table 1. Richard fussed with the chairs, making sure everything was positioned perfectly. The attendant helped Vincent transfer from the wheelchair to the dining chair, a process that was clearly painful for the old man even though he made no sound. His hands, Emma noticed, were gnarled with arthritis. Working man's hands, despite the billions. And on his right pinky finger, there was a ring. Gold, worn smooth with age. And on it, barely visible from where Emma stood, was a crest that made her breath catch in her throat. She knew that crest. She'd memorized it as a child, tracing the pattern with her finger while Nonna Maria told her stories about the old country. Santi Poveri, the saints of the poor. It was the same crest as her pendant. Emma's hand flew to her throat, touching the pendant through her uniform. Her mind was racing. It had to be a coincidence. Lots of people from Sicily wore those symbols. It didn't mean anything. It couldn't mean anything. But Nona's voice echoed in her memory. This will guide you, Bella. When you need it most, this will show you the way home. Richard materialized at her elbow, making her jump. What are you waiting for? He hissed. Get over there and take their drink order. Now! Emma forced her legs to move. Each step across the dining room felt like walking through water. Every eye was still on table one, watching to see what would happen. Would Vincent Caruso speak after 30 years of silence? Would he eat? Would he explode in rage and have the entire staff fired? Sophie saw Emma first. The little girl's face lit up with that uncomplicated happiness that children have before life teaches them to be suspicious of kindness. Hi, Sophie said. You're really pretty. Emma found herself smiling despite her fear. Thank you, sweetheart. You're pretty too. I love your dress. My daddy bought it for me special, for Thanksgiving. Marcus looked up at Emma, and for just a moment their eyes met. His were dark brown, exhausted, but there was something else there too. A kind of desperate hope, like a man drowning who just spotted land. Good evening, Emma said, her voice steadier than she felt. Welcome to the Winter Garden. My name is Emma, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with something to drink? Marcus opened his mouth to answer, but Sophie interrupted. Are you an angel? Emma blinked. What? You have light around you. Sophie tilted her head, studying Emma with the seriousness that children bring to important questions. Like in my dreams. My mama used to visit me in dreams, and she had light too. Are you an angel like her? Marcus looked mortified. Sophie, that's not... Emma is our waitress. She's not... But Vincent Caruso had gone very still. The old man's head turned slowly, like a statue coming to life after centuries of stillness. His gray eyes locked onto Emma's face, then dropped to her throat, to the pendant hanging there, the gold crest catching the light. Emma watched his hand begin to tremble where it rested on the table. His mouth opened slightly, his breath coming faster. His eyes were wide, not with anger, but with something that looked almost like recognition, or shock, or both. The restaurant seemed to hold its breath. Marcus had stopped mid-sentence, staring at his father. Sophie had gone quiet, sensing that something important was happening, even if she didn't understand what. Vincent's hand lifted slowly from the table. It shook as it rose, reaching toward Emma, toward the pendant, his fingers stretching across the space between them. And then, for the first time in 30 years, Vincent Caruso opened his mouth to speak. The sound that came from Vincent Caruso's throat was like grinding metal. Rusty, rough. A voice that had been buried for 3 decades trying to claw its way back into the world. Maria. The single word fell into the silence of the Winter Garden like a stone into still water. Ripples of shock spread outward. At the surrounding tables, forks paused halfway to mouths. Conversations died mid-sentence. Even the kitchen noise seemed to fade as if the entire universe had stopped to witness this moment. Emma felt the blood drain from her face. Her hand was still touching the pendant at her throat, and now Vincent's trembling fingers were reaching toward it. Toward her, his gray eyes locked on the gold crest with an intensity that bordered on desperation. Papa? Marcus's voice cracked. He half stood from his chair, one hand gripping the table edge. Papa, did you just... But Vincent wasn't looking at his son. He was staring at Emma with an expression that mixed wonder and grief and something else. Recognition. After 30 years of silence, Vincent Caruso had spoken, and the word he'd chosen was a name from another lifetime. Maria, he said again, stronger this time. The rust was falling away from his voice. Maria Rossi. Emma's legs went weak. She pulled out the empty chair at the table and sat down without asking permission, without remembering protocol, without caring that Richard was probably having a stroke somewhere behind her. Her fingers wrapped around the pendant so tightly the metal edge cut into her palm. You knew her? Emma's voice came out as barely a whisper. You knew my Nonna Maria? Vincent's hand reached across the table and gripped Emma's wrist. His skin was papery and cold, but his grip was iron. His eyes searched her face with a hunger that made her want to look away, but couldn't. Your Nonna, he breathed. Your grandmother. How? When? She died 10 years ago. Emma's vision blurred with sudden tears. She raised me in Bensonhurst. She came from Sicily in 1955. San Angelo. It wasn't a question. Vincent's voice grew stronger with each word, as if speaking was a muscle he was remembering how to use. She came from Sant'Angelo, the village in the hills. Yes. How did you know? Vincent released her wrist and pressed both hands against his face. His shoulders began to shake. For a terrible moment, Emma thought he was having some kind of attack. But then she heard the sound. Deep, wrenching sobs that seemed to come from the very center of his being. Sophie slid out of her chair and came around the table. She put her small hand on Vincent's shoulder. Grandpa, why are you crying? Are you sad? Vincent pulled his hands away from his face. Tears streamed down his weathered cheeks, catching in the lines around his mouth. But he was smiling, actually smiling. A broken, beautiful smile that transformed his face from stone into something human. No, little one. His voice was thick with emotion. I am happy. For the first time in so very long, I am happy. He looked at Sophie, really looked at her in a way that Marcus had never seen. You are so beautiful. Just like your grandmother Isabella. Then his gaze shifted back to Emma. And you have Maria's eyes, the same kindness. I don't understand. Emma's mind was spinning. The entire restaurant was watching them now, not even pretending to eat their expensive meals. How did you know Nonna Maria? Vincent took a shaking breath. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of memory. 1953, Sant'Angelo. I was 8 years old. My family was starving. My father, he was proud man, too proud to accept charity. But Maria, she knew. Every night she left bread on our windowsill, fresh bread, still warm. She never said anything, never made it obvious. Just left it there like maybe the birds had brought it, like maybe God himself was providing. He paused, his hands trembling on the table. We ate that bread for 6 months. My father, my mother, my younger brother, Marco, and me. That bread kept us alive until we could emigrate to America, and I never got to thank her. I looked for her when I came to Brooklyn, asked everyone from Sant'Angelo, but no one knew where she went. She was in Bensonhurst, Emma said, the whole time, just a few miles away. Vincent's face crumpled again. So close. All these years, so close. And I never knew. I never found her to repay the debt. There's no debt, Emma said softly. Nonna did that because she was good, not because she expected anything back. That makes the debt greater, not less. Vincent reached out and touched the pendant at Emma's throat with one finger, gentle as a prayer. This crest, Santi Poveri, the saints of the poor. My mother wore the same pendant. I wear the same ring. He held up his right hand, showing the gold band. This is how I know you are Maria's blood. This is how I know God has brought you to me. Marcus finally found his voice. Papa, you're talking. You're actually talking. Vincent turned to his son, and for the first time in 30 years, he really saw him. Yes, my son, I am talking. Because this girl, Maria's granddaughter, she has reminded me that silence is not honor. Silence is cowardice, and I have been a coward too long. Sophie climbed into Vincent's lap, something she'd never dared to do before. She wrapped her arms around his neck. I love you, Grandpa. Your voice is nice. Vincent held his granddaughter and wept into her hair. Around them, the restaurant had erupted in whispers. At the edges of Emma's vision, she saw Richard frozen by the kitchen door, his face pale with shock. Other diners were taking out their phones, probably already texting friends, calling family. Vincent Caruso speaking was news. Vincent Caruso crying in public was history. But Emma wasn't thinking about any of that. She was thinking about Nonna Maria's last words. This will guide you home. She thought the old woman meant the pendant would somehow lead her to her unknown father. But maybe it meant something bigger. Maybe it meant this moment, this connection, this crack in the wall of grief that had separated this family from itself. A waiter appeared with water glasses, his hands shaking so badly the ice rattled. Another brought menus, placing them carefully on the table as if they were handling sacred texts. Through it all, Vincent kept one arm around Sophie and one hand near Emma, as if afraid she might disappear if he didn't keep her close. Finally, Marcus cleared his throat. Papa, what would you like to eat? Vincent picked up the menu and scanned it with clear disgust. His moment of vulnerability was already hardening back into something else. Not silence, but judgment. What is this? He pointed to an item. Deconstructed turkey with pomegranate reduction and truffle foam. It's the Winter Garden's signature Thanksgiving dish, Marcus said carefully. Chef Jean-Pierre is very... This is not food. Vincent pushed the menu away so hard it slid across the table and it nearly fell off the edge. This is performance. This is rich people playing pretend. Emma saw her opening. She didn't know where the courage came from. Maybe from Nonna Maria, maybe from desperation, maybe from the way Vincent had looked at her pendant like it was a piece of home. But she leaned forward and said quietly, "What kind of food do you want, Mr. Caruso?" Vincent's eyes locked on hers. Real food, honest food, the food Maria used to make in Sant'Angelo. Simple things. Pasta with breadcrumbs and oil. Nothing fancy, nothing pretending to be more than it is. Pasta alla mollica, Emma said. The Sicilian words felt natural on her tongue. Nonna had taught her the dialect, made her practice until the rough edges felt like home in her mouth. Vincent's face transformed. Yes, exactly yes. You know this dish? Nonna taught me. She made it every Sunday. She said, Emma's voice caught. She said it was prayer. That every dish tells a story, and scarpetta tells the story of survival. Scarpetta. Vincent repeated the word like a benediction. When I was boy, my mother would make pasta. We had so little. But at the end, she would tear bread and wipe the bowl clean. Every drop of oil, every crumb. She called it scarpetta, the little shoe, walking through the sauce. She said it honored the meal, honored the earth that gave us food. Sophie was listening with wide eyes. What's scarpetta? Emma smiled at her. It's when you take bread and wipe your plate clean at the end of the meal. It means you're grateful for every bite, that nothing should be wasted. Can you make this food? Vincent asked Emma. Can you make pasta like Maria made? I can try. No, Vincent's voice was firm. I am not asking you to try. I am asking you to do it. Tonight. Now, I will pay you $500 just for this meal. And you will cook it yourself, not the fancy chef, you. Richard materialized at the table like a shark smelling blood. Mr. Caruso, I must apologize. Emma is a waitress, not a chef. Our chef, Jean-Pierre, has 3 Michelin stars. I assure you his Thanksgiving menu is... Vincent didn't even look at him. I don't care about Michelin stars. I care about truth. This girl knows truth. She will cook or I leave. Marcus put his hand on his father's arm. Papa, we can't ask her to. I'm not asking. I'm paying. $500 for one meal. Vincent turned back to Emma. Plus, I will pay whatever this restaurant would have made from me tonight. 1,000? 2,000? Name the price. Emma's mind reeled. $500. That was half her monthly rent. That was Lily's treatment for the next week. That was the difference between getting evicted in December and maybe, just maybe, making it to January. I'll do it, she heard herself say. I'll cook for you. Richard's face went purple. Absolutely not. This is highly irregular. Chef Jean-Pierre will never. Then I buy this restaurant. Vincent's voice was calm, matter of fact. Right now, tonight, I will pay whatever owner wants and fire Chef Jean-Pierre myself. Or you let girl cook one meal and everyone keeps their jobs. Your choice. The restaurant had gone completely silent again. Even the kitchen noise had stopped. Every person in the Winter Garden was watching this confrontation, watching Richard's face cycle through shock and rage and finally calculation. Vincent Caruso wasn't bluffing. He had the money to buy this place 100 times over. Of course, Mr. Caruso. Richard's voice came out strangled. Whatever you wish, Emma will prepare your meal personally. He grabbed Emma's arm hard enough to bruise and pulled her toward the kitchen. His whisper was venomous. If you embarrass me, if you ruin this, I will destroy you. Do you understand? I will make sure you never work again anywhere. Emma pulled her arm free. For the first time since she'd started working at the Winter Garden, she looked Richard directly in the eye. I understand perfectly. The kitchen was chaos. Chef Jean-Pierre stood in the center of it like a general commanding an army, his white coat spotless, his voice cutting through the noise with French-accented precision. When Emma walked in with Richard behind her, every head turned. "What is this?" Jean-Pierre demanded. "We are in the middle of service. I don't have time for—" "Vincent Caruso has requested that Emma prepare his meal personally," Richard said. His tone suggested he was delivering a death sentence. The kitchen erupted in French expletives. Jean-Pierre's face went from pale to red in seconds. "This is my kitchen. I am the chef. You cannot possibly expect me to allow a waitress to—" "It's not a request, chef." Richard's smile was cruel. "It's a direct order from Vincent Caruso. If you have a problem with it, you can take it up with him. I'm sure he'll be very understanding." Jean-Pierre looked at Emma with pure hatred, but he stepped aside. He had no choice. In the hierarchy of the Winter Garden, even a 3-Michelin-star chef answered to $8 billion. Emma moved to the prep station, her hands surprisingly steady. Around her, the kitchen staff whispered and stared. A young sous chef offered her an apron. An older line cook, a man with gray hair and kind eyes, nodded his approval. "I am from Calabria," the old cook said in heavily accented English. "I know pasta alla mollica. You need help, you ask me." Emma smiled gratefully. Then she closed her eyes and let herself drift back. Not to the Winter Garden's gleaming kitchen, but to Nona Maria's tiny apartment in Bensonhurst. The cramped kitchen that always smelled like garlic and tomatoes. The ancient stove with the burner that never heated evenly. Nona's hands, twisted with arthritis, still moving with grace as she cooked. "Feel the oil, Bella," Nona's voice echoed in her memory. "Listen when it sings to you. Cooking is not about following recipes. It's about understanding." Emma opened her eyes. She found the olive oil, the real cooking oil, not the expensive finishing oil that Jean-Pierre kept for drizzling. She poured it into a heavy skillet and set it over high heat. While it warmed, she grabbed garlic cloves and crushed them under the flat of a knife, leaving the papery skins on just for a moment to infuse the flavor. The oil began to shimmer. Emma dropped the crushed garlic in, skins and all. The sizzle was immediate and loud. That sound, Nana had called it singing. The kitchen staff gathered around, watching. Even Jean-Pierre moved closer, his arms crossed, his face skeptical but curious. Emma let the garlic brown, then fished out the skins with a slotted spoon. The oil was now golden and fragrant, carrying the ghost of the garlic's bite. She found a loaf of sourdough bread on the rack, day-old and perfect. She tore the interior into rough chunks and began crumbling them between her fingers, making uneven breadcrumbs. "What are you doing?" Jean-Pierre couldn't help himself. "The bread, you must process it evenly. Use a food processor." "No." Emma didn't look up. Nona said uneven is better. Different sizes toast different and some dark, some light. More flavor. She dumped the breadcrumbs into the singing oil. The sound changed, became louder, more urgent. Emma stirred constantly, watching the crumbs transform from white to gold to deep brown. The smell hit the air, nutty, earthy, simple and profound. The old line cook from Calabria inhaled deeply and smiled. "Yes, this is right. This is how my mother made it." Emma added a generous pinch of salt, a smaller pinch of red pepper flakes. Then she turned to the pasta. She found spaghetti and dropped it into boiling water, but she didn't wait for it to finish. She pulled it out while it was still firm, still had bite in the center, and dumped it directly into the skillet with the breadcrumbs and oil. "Too early," Jean-Pierre protested. "A pasta is not cooked." "It finishes in the pan," Emma said. She tossed the pasta with the breadcrumbs, adding pasta water to create a sauce that clung to each strand. The starch from the water combined with the oil, making something glossy and perfect. Finally, she tore fresh parsley and tossed it in, just for color, just for the smell of something green and alive. She plated it in a simple white bowl. It looked nothing like the Winter Garden's usual presentations. No tower of food, no artistic swooshes of sauce, no microgreens or edible flowers. Just pasta in a bowl, brown with breadcrumbs, glossy with oil, simple as prayer. Jean-Pierre stared at it. "This is what you will serve to Vincent Caruso? This peasant food?" "This is what he asked for," Emma said. She carried the bowl through the swinging kitchen doors and back into the dining room. The walk across the restaurant felt longer than it had before. Every eye followed her. The smell of the pasta preceded her, cutting through the perfumes and colognes, through the scent of expensive wine and fancy sauces. It smelled like poverty. It smelled like home. Vincent had his eyes closed when she reached the table. But when the bowl touched the tablecloth in front of him, his eyes opened. He leaned forward and inhaled deeply, and Emma watched his face crumble, not with disgust, with memory. "My mother's kitchen," Vincent whispered. 1953, the day before we left for America. She made this exact dish, our last meal in Sicily. I was 8 years old. I didn't know it would be the last time. He picked up his fork with a hand that shook so badly the metal rattled against the ceramic. Marcus reached out to steady him, but Vincent waved him away. He managed to twirl a nest of spaghetti around the fork, catching the dark breadcrumbs in the strands. He lifted it to his mouth. The entire restaurant held its breath. Vincent took the bite. He chewed slowly, his eyes closing again. And then the tears came. Not quiet tears this time, but sobs that shook his whole body. He covered his face with one hand and wept openly, his shoulders heaving. Sophie's eyes went wide with alarm. "Daddy, is Grandpa okay?" Marcus looked at Emma helplessly. Emma knelt beside Vincent's chair and put her hand gently on his arm. "Is it wrong? Did I make it wrong?" Vincent dropped his hand from his face. His cheeks were wet, his eyes red, but he was smiling, actually smiling. "No, you made it exactly right, too right. It tastes like home, like family, like everything I lost and forgot I was missing." He took another bite and another, eating with a hunger that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than his stomach. He wasn't eating to fill himself. He was eating to remember, to connect with something he'd buried 30 years ago along with his wife. When he finished the bowl, he did something that made half the dining room gasp. He took a piece of bread from the basket, tore it in half, and wiped the inside of the bowl with it. Scarpetta, the little shoe walking through the last traces of oil and breadcrumbs, honoring every drop. He ate the bread slowly, reverently. Then he set down his fork and looked at Emma with clear eyes. "You have given me a gift tonight, more than food. You have given me memory. You have given me my mother back, just for a moment, and I must repay this debt." "There's no debt," Emma started, but Vincent held up his hand. "There is always debt. Maria saved my family with her bread. Now you save me with yours. So I make you an offer." He paused, gathering his words carefully. "Come work for me, not as waitress, as my personal chef, for 1 month, December 1st to Christmas Day." Emma's breath caught. "Mr. Caruso, $10,000, $2,500 per week. You will cook breakfast, lunch, and dinner for my family. Simple food, real food, like tonight." $10,000. Emma's mind tried to process that number. That was more than she made in 3 months at the Winter Garden. That was her rent and medical bills and every debt that kept her awake at night. That was salvation. "But there is condition," Vincent continued. "You bring your daughter, Lily, yes? Sophie tells me about her friend Lily from daycare. Same age. They should meet, spend time together. You want me to bring my 5-year-old to your house?" Emma couldn't believe what she was hearing. "I want your daughter to be with mine," Marcus said quietly. He'd been silent through most of this, just watching his father speak for the first time in his memory. Now he looked at Emma with those tired, sad eyes. "Sophie needs friends, needs family. And my father is right, this isn't just about food. It's about something bigger. You will live with us," Vincent added. "Guest suite, you and Lily, everything provided. And at end of month, $10,000 plus," he smiled slightly, "plus you teach Marcus to cook. He is disaster in kitchen." Sad for a grown man. "Papa," Marcus looked embarrassed. "It's true." Vincent turned to his son. "Your wife used to cook for you. Now she is gone, and you eat takeout like college student. This is shameful." Sophie was bouncing in her seat. "Please say yes. Please. Lily can stay with me, and we can play, and—" Emma's head was spinning. This was insane. This was the opportunity of a lifetime. This was dangerous. She didn't know these people. She couldn't just move into a stranger's house with her daughter. But then she thought about the eviction notice, about Lily's medical bills, about the fact that December rent was due in 3 days and she had exactly $47 in her bank account. I need to think about it, she said. Think tonight, Vincent replied. Call me tomorrow with answer. Here. He pulled a card from his jacket pocket. Heavy black cardstock with gold lettering. My private number. Only family has this. Now you have it too. Emma took the card with trembling fingers. Before she could respond, a cold voice cut through the moment. How touching. The billionaire and the waitress. It's like a fairy tale. Everyone turned. A woman stood beside their table. She was in her late 60s, elegant in the way that only old money could be, with silver hair in a perfect bob and a cashmere coat that probably cost more than Emma's car. Her face was beautiful and hard, like porcelain that had been fired too many times. Victoria, Marcus stood so quickly his chair scraped against the floor. What are you doing here? I came to have Thanksgiving dinner at my favorite restaurant. Victoria Hastings' smile didn't reach her eyes. Imagine my surprise when I heard Vincent Caruso was dining here. Speaking no less after 30 years, what a miracle. She looked at Emma, and her gaze was sharp as a knife. And who might you be, dear? Emma Russo, I'm the help. Yes, I gathered that. Victoria's tone made the words sound dirty. How wonderful that you found such generous patrons. Mrs. Hastings, Vincent's voice was cold. This is private family dinner. Of course, I wouldn't dream of intruding. But Victoria's eyes were still on Emma, assessing, calculating. I just wanted to wish my granddaughter a happy Thanksgiving. Sophie, darling, come give Grandma Victoria a kiss. Sophie looked at her father uncertainly. Marcus nodded stiffly. The little girl went to Victoria, who bent down and embraced her with the kind of careful affection that wealthy people give to breakable things. I'll see you very soon, darling, Victoria murmured. Very soon indeed. She straightened and looked at Marcus. Don't forget, January 5th, the hearing. I suggest you prepared yourself. Her eyes flicked to Emma one more time. And be careful who you bring into Sophie's life. The court will be watching. She swept away, leaving a wake of expensive perfume and unspoken threats. Marcus sank back into his chair, his face pale. Emma didn't understand everything that had just happened, but she understood enough. That woman was dangerous. That woman wanted something. And whatever was happening with this family, Emma was now tangled in it. I should go, Emma said quietly. Let you finish your dinner. Vincent caught her hand. Tomorrow, you call. You say yes. This is important, Emma. More important than you know. She nodded and walked away on legs that felt like water. Behind her, she heard Sophie asking her father what January 5th meant, and Marcus's quiet evasion. In the kitchen, Richard was waiting. His face was a mask of fury barely contained. I don't know what just happened out there, he said through gritted teeth, but I know opportunity when I see it. And you, Russo, just became very valuable, which means you're also very dangerous. I don't understand. You will. Richard's smile was cruel. Oh, you will. He walked away, and Emma stood alone in the kitchen, Vincent Caruso's business card burning in her pocket like a promise or a curse, or maybe both. Outside in the dining room, the wealthiest man in New York sat with his son and granddaughter and spoke for the first time in 30 years. And somewhere in Brooklyn, a 5-year-old girl named Lily slept in a cold apartment, dreaming of turkeys and full plates and a life that Emma was just beginning to realize might actually be possible, if she was brave enough to reach for it. Emma stood outside the daycare at 7:30 in the morning, staring at Vincent Caruso's business card. The black stock felt heavy in her hand, heavier than paper should be. The gold-embossed numbers seemed to glow in the weak December sunlight. She'd been holding this card for 12 hours. All through her subway ride home last night. All through the sleepless hours lying beside Lily on the pull-out couch, listening to her daughter's breathing and trying to convince herself this wasn't crazy. All through the cold shower this morning because the hot water was shut off again. $10,000. 4 words that could change everything. Mrs. Chen opened the daycare door, saw Emma standing there, and her expression shifted to resignation. The look said everything. December 1st was here, and Emma still owed $1,200 with no way to pay it. Emma, Mrs. Chen's voice was gentle. I'm sorry, I can't keep. I know. Emma pulled out her phone with shaking fingers. Just give me 2 minutes. Please. She dialed before she could talk herself out of it. The phone rang once. Vincent Caruso. His voice was stronger than it had been last night. Sleep had helped, or maybe speaking after 30 years was like exercising a muscle that grew stronger with use. Mr. Caruso, it's Emma Russo. Emma, the warmth in his voice was immediate. You have answer for me? Yes. Emma watched Lily through the daycare window, playing with blocks, oblivious to how close they'd come to losing everything. I accept your offer. All of it. The joy, the room, everything. Good. This is very good. Vincent's relief was audible. When can you start? Today, I have to give notice at the Winter Garden, but I can... Don't give notice. I already buy restaurant. Emma's breath stopped. You what? This morning, my lawyers, they work very fast. I now own the Winter Garden, and I have new manager starting Monday. Man named David Chen. Good man, fair man. You know him? No, He is friend of Marcus. Also, I give 2 months severance to staff I let go, including floor manager Richard Hawthorne. Vincent's voice carried deep satisfaction. He will not bother you again. Emma's legs went weak. She sat down hard on the daycare steps. You fired Richard? I fire a man who steals from his staff and treats them like garbage. Yeah. A pause. Emma, I know about the tip. Marcus, he leaves you $4,000 last night. Richard? He take it. Say you forfeit because you are fired, but I have security footage. Cloud backup. Richard, he is lucky I only fire him. I could press charges. $4,000. Her tip. Stolen while she was in the kitchen cooking the meal that changed everything. I don't know what to say. Say you pack your things and come to Fifth Avenue, apartment 1. You know this address, Stress? I can find it. Driver will come for you, 2 hours. He'll help you pack. Everything you own, you bring. This is your home now, for December at least. Vincent's voice softened. And maybe longer, if things work how I hope. After she hung up, Emma sat on the steps for a long moment. Mrs. Chen came out, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Emma and sat beside her. Good news or bad news? Mrs. Chen asked. I'm not sure yet. Emma must sip on the coffee. It was terrible. Instant powder mixed with hot water, but it was warm and Mrs. Chen had given it freely. But we're not going to be homeless. Then it's good news. Mrs. Chen patted her knee. You're a good mother, Emma. Lily is lucky to have you. Inside, through the window, Emma watched her daughter stack blocks into a tower. Lily's tongue stuck out in concentration, her small hands careful and precise, building something that would inevitably fall, but building it anyway with all the hope that children carry before the world teaches them about gravity. I hope so, Emma whispered. 2 hours later, a black Mercedes pulled up outside her apartment building. The driver was a man in his 60s with kind eyes and a professional demeanor that suggested he'd seen everything and judged nothing. He helped Emma pack her and Lily's entire life into 4 cardboard boxes and 2 duffel bags. Everything they owned fit in a trunk. Lily sat in the back seat, her eyes huge as they drove through Manhattan. The buildings got taller, cleaner, more expensive. The people on the sidewalks wore coats that cost more than Emma's monthly rent. And then they turned onto Fifth Avenue, and Lily actually gasped. Mommy, is this where we're going? Yes, baby. Is it a hotel? No, it's a home. The mansion was 5 stories of limestone and glass, wedged between buildings that cost millions per square foot. A doorman in a uniform opened the car door. He smiled at Lily like she was royalty, not a 5-year-old in thrift store clothes. Welcome, Miss Russo. Mr. Caruso is expecting you. The lobby was all marble and crystal, with a chandelier that looked like frozen water. Lily's hand tightened in Emma's. This was too much, too big, too far from anything they'd ever known. The elevator was mirrored on all sides. Lily stared at her reflection, then at Emma's. Mommy, we look the same. We look scared, Emma said honestly. Yeah. Lily leaned against her, but together scared. That's better than alone scared. The elevator opened directly into the apartment, not onto a hallway, but into a space so large Emma couldn't process it at first. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Central Park. A grand piano sat in one corner. Bow that looked museum quality hung on walls painted in soft grays and whites. And in the center of it all, In his wheelchair with a blanket over his legs sat Vincent Caruso. Beside him stood Marcus, looking uncomfortable in jeans and a sweater instead of his usual suit. And between them, bouncing on her toes with barely contained excitement, was Sophie. Lily! Sophie ran forward, grabbed Lily's hand, and pulled her into the apartment. You're here. You're really here. Come see my room. Come see everything. The two girls disappeared down a hallway, leaving Emma standing with her boxes and her terror. Vincent wheeled himself closer. Welcome home, Emma. This isn't home, Emma said automatically. This is too much? Marcus smiled slightly. Yeah, it is, but you get used to it, eventually. Your room is this way, Vincent gestured. Second floor, guest suite, is actually small apartment. Bedroom, bathroom, sitting room. Lily can sleep with you or in room next door. Up to you. Emma followed them through hallways lined with family photos. Vincent and a beautiful woman with dark hair, young and laughing. That must be Isabella, before the accident. Marcus and the same woman, his wedding photo, both of them glowing with that particular light that people have when they still believe in forever. And Sophie as a baby, held by a blonde woman with kind eyes. Jennifer, gone 3 years now. This house was built on ghosts. The guest suite was bigger than Emma's entire Brooklyn apartment. The bed was king-sized with a white duvet that looked like clouds. The bathroom had heated floors and a shower with 6 different settings. The sitting room had a couch and a desk and windows that overlooked the park. Is too much? Vincent asked, watching her face. It's perfect, Emma said honestly. It's terrifying and perfect. Good. Terrifying keeps you awake. Awake is good. Vincent smiled. Now lunch is at noon. You cook whatever you like. Kitchen is downstairs. Everything you need is there. If not, you tell me. I get it. Understand? Emma nodded. Marcus cleared his throat. My father forgot to mention. There's a car available if you need to go anywhere. Driver on call 24 hours. And Lily's medical treatment, we've arranged for her to see Dr. Patterson at Mount Sinai. He's the best pediatric specialist in the country. First appointment is Monday. I can't afford. Is covered, Vincent interrupted. Part of salary. Health insurance for you both. Full coverage. No copay, no deductible. You get sick, you go to doctor. Simple. Emma sat down on the couch before her legs gave out. This wasn't real. This couldn't be real. People didn't just sweep in and fix your entire life in one morning. Why, she asked. Why are you doing all this? Vincent and Marcus exchanged a look. Some unspoken communication passed between them. Finally, Vincent spoke. You remember I tell you about my brother, Marco? You mentioned him last night, the younger brother who came to America with you. Yes, Marco was good boy, kind. He died young, in accident. Construction site, he was only 23 years old. Vincent's hands tightened on the wheelchair arms. Before he died, he go back to Sicily one time, 1954, to say goodbye to the village. He meet a girl there, they fall in love. But Marco, he was already engaged to American girl. Rich family, important business connections, wedding already planned. Emma's chest tightened. She knew where this was going. Marco come back to America. He marry the rich girl. He never tell her about the Sicilian girl. Never tell anyone. Vincent's voice dropped. But 6 months later, the Sicilian girl's family, they contact my mother. The girl was pregnant. She have baby, a daughter. The room spun. Emma gripped the couch cushions. The family, they want nothing to do with American Caruso family. They say Marco abandoned their daughter, make her shameful. My mother, she tried to help. Send money, send letters, all get returned. The girl's family, they cut off all contact. Vincent leaned forward. That baby girl was your grandmother, Emma. My brother Marco, he was your great-grandfather. Emma couldn't breathe. That's not possible. Maria Rossi was not your grandmother by blood. She was your grandmother's sister. She raised your grandmother when the scandal make family leave San Angelo. Move to America, to Brooklyn. Change name. Start over. Vincent pulled an envelope from his pocket. This letter, Maria write it before she die. She leave with lawyer, with instructions. Give to Emma when she find her family. Lawyer, he tracked me down after I buy restaurant. He give me this. Emma took the envelope with numb fingers. The paper was yellowed, the handwriting shaky but familiar. Nona Maria's script. You don't have to read it now, Marcus said gently. This is a lot to process. But Emma was already unfolding the letter, the words blurred and refocused. My dearest Emma, if you are reading this, you have met Vincent Caruso. You have found your family. I am sorry I never tell you the truth. Your mother, she never know her real father was Marco Caruso. She think he was local boy who die young. I keep this secret because I am afraid. Afraid the Caruso family reject us again, afraid of shame. But Vincent, he is good man. He looked for us for years. He never stopped trying to find us, to repay the bread I leave on his windowsill. This is his nature. He is loyal like his father. You are Caruso blood, Emma. This is your birthright. Not the money, but the family. The connection. Vincent lost his wife. Marcus lost his wife. Sophie lost her mother. They are broken, like you are broken. But broken pieces, they fit together. They make something new, something beautiful. This is why I give you the pendant. This is why I teach you to cook. I know someday you will need these things. You will need to prove who you are. The Scarpetta, Bella. This is what you are. Taking what little there is and making it sacred. Taking broken family and making it whole. I love you forever. Nona Maria. Emma folded the letter carefully and pressed it against her chest. Tears streamed down her face, but she wasn't sobbing. This was quiet crying, the kind that comes from somewhere too deep for sound. We are family, Vincent said softly. Second cousins, technically. But family is not about technicality. It's about choice. I choose you, Emma. I choose to bring you home. And I choose you too, Marcus added. His voice was rough with emotion. Sophie needs you. My father needs you. And honestly, I think I need you too. Emma looked up at him. Their eyes met, and something passed between them. Recognition. Not romantic, not yet, but the seed of it. Two people who understood lost looking at each other and seeing possibility. Down the hall, they heard Lily and Sophie laughing. The sound was pure and bright, untouched by the weight of the conversation happening in the next room. They don't know any of this, Emma said, about being related. We tell them when time is right, Vincent replied. For now, they are just friends. Just two little girls who need each other. Emma stood up, wiped her face, and straightened her shoulders. Okay. If I'm going to be your chef, I should probably figure out what everyone likes to eat. Emma, Marcus caught her hand as she passed. Thank you for saying yes, for giving us a chance. I know this is all insane. Insane is relative, Emma said. 2 weeks ago, I thought insane was working double shifts and still not making rent. This kind of insane is better. She went downstairs to explore the kitchen. It was a chef's dream. Professional-grade appliances, marble countertops, a pantry the size of her old apartment's bedroom. She stood in the center of it, slowly turning, taking it all in. This was hers now. For a month at least, maybe longer. The thought terrified her, but it also felt right in a way she couldn't explain. Like Nona Maria's pendant had been pulling her toward this moment her entire life. Like every bad thing that had happened, every struggle, every night lying awake worrying about money, had been leading her here. To family she didn't know she had. To a future she hadn't dared to imagine. She pulled out her phone and looked at the last text from the hospital billing department. $8,000 due. She typed a response. Payment coming Monday. Full balance. Thank you for your patience. Then she opened the massive refrigerator and started planning lunch. Upstairs in Sophie's room, two little girls lay on the floor with colored pencils scattered around them. They were drawing a picture together, their heads close, their voices a constant, happy chatter. Is your mommy nice? Sophie asked. The nicest, Lily said. She works really hard so I can have stuff. My daddy works hard too, but he's always sad. Sophie added a son to their drawing. Do you think if our parents are together, maybe they'll be less sad? Maybe. Lily drew a house with careful lines. My mommy deserves to be happy. She's always taking care of me. Nobody takes care of her. My daddy needs someone to take care of him too. He doesn't even know how to make pasta. The girls giggled. They didn't know they were related, didn't know about Marco Caruso and the scandal in Sicily 70 years ago, didn't know about the web of grief and guilt that had kept their families apart for decades. They just knew they liked each other. And in their 5 and 6-year-old minds, that was enough to build a whole future on. In the library, Vincent sat alone, looking at a photo of Isabella. She was young in the picture, maybe 30, laughing at something outside the frame. He touched her face through the glass. "I'm talking again, my love," he whispered, "after all these years. And it is because of Maria's granddaughter. Because of the bread your great-uncle's daughter left on our windowsill when we were starving." He set the photo down gently. "Everything is connected, yes? The bread, the pendant, the girl, the silence. All of it leading to this moment, leading to maybe finally our family can heal." Outside the window, snow began to fall. The first snow of December, dusting Central Park in white. The city sparkled like something from a story, like magic was real, and second chances existed, and broken families could be made whole again. In the kitchen, Emma chopped vegetables and hummed one of Nonna Maria's old songs. The melody was Sicilian, older than memory, carried across an ocean and through generations. A song about home, about survival, about making something beautiful from nothing. Scarpita, the little shoe walking through the sauce, honoring every drop. She didn't know it yet, but upstairs, Marcus stood in the hallway listening to her hum. He hadn't heard music in his house since Jennifer died, hadn't heard joy. But now this stranger who wasn't a stranger, this cousin he'd never met, this woman with her daughter and her courage and her grandmother's pendant, was filling his home with sound again. He thought about Victoria's threat, January 5th, the custody hearing. He thought about his failing company, about the hostile takeover, about all the ways his life was falling apart. And then he thought about Emma's smile when Sophie had grabbed Lily's hand, about his father's voice after 30 years of silence, about the possibility that maybe, just maybe, disaster could turn into something else, something like hope. Downstairs, Emma called up the stairs. "Lunch is ready." And for the first time in years, the Caruso family came together. Not silent, not separate, not drowning in their individual griefs, but together, talking, laughing, learning how to be whole again, one meal at a time. 3 weeks had passed since Emma moved into the Fifth Avenue mansion. 3 weeks that felt like a lifetime compressed into moments. Victoria's lawyers had tried their worst at the December 24th hearing, painting Emma as an opportunist and Marcus as negligent. But Sophie's testimony, delivered with the heartbreaking clarity that only children possess, had turned the tide. "Daddy's not sad anymore," she told the judge, "and Emma makes us feel like a family again." Vincent's speech had sealed it. The old man had stood from his wheelchair, his voice steady and sure, and told the court about silence and grief and the cost of letting fear win. The judge had ruled in Marcus's favor. Victoria, her face crumbling with the realization that control wasn't love, had asked for forgiveness instead of appealed. Now on Christmas morning, snow fell soft against the windows as the Caruso family gathered around the long dining table. Not the formal dining room with its crystal and intimidation, but the kitchen table where Emma cooked and life happened. Vincent sat at the head, stronger now, his voice a constant presence. Marcus and Emma sat together, their hands intertwined under the table, a small diamond ring catching the morning light. Sophie and Lily wore matching red dresses, their heads bent together over a drawing of their family that now included everyone, even Grandma Victoria, who sat quietly at the far end, learning how to be present instead of controlling. Emma had made the pasta that morning. Pasta alla Mollica, simple and true. One bowl in the center of the table. "Before we eat," Vincent said, his voice carrying the weight of everything they'd survived, "we do scarpetta. This is our tradition now. This is how we remember." He took bread, tore it carefully, and wiped the bowl with reverence. "For Isabella, who I lost to silence." He passed the bread to Marcus. Marcus wiped the bowl, his eyes bright. "For Jennifer, who taught me that love is worth the risk." He passed it to Sophie. "For Mommy Jennifer in heaven," Sophie whispered, "and for Emma, who came to earth." She passed it to Lily. Lily wiped the bowl with solemn concentration. "For Nonna Maria, who left bread for people." She passed it to Emma, Emma's hands trembled as she held the bread. For my mother, for Nona, for everyone who taught me that scarpetta isn't just about food. It's about honoring every blessing, wasting nothing, making the broken sacred. She wiped the bowl clean and passed the bread to Victoria. The older woman's hands shook. For my daughter Jennifer, and for teaching me that family isn't about control, it's about love. They ate the bread together, tasting oil and memory and hope. Outside, New York sparkled with Christmas lights and fresh snow. Inside, a family that had been shattered by grief and silence sat together, whole at last. Not perfect, not without scars, but together. Vincent looked around the table at faces he'd almost lost to his own fear, at the granddaughter he'd finally learned to love, at the great niece who'd traveled 70 years and an ocean to bring them all home. Scarpetta, he said softly, the little shoe walking through the sauce. This is what we are, taking what little we have and making it everything. And in that moment, in that kitchen, with snow falling and bread shared and silence finally broken, they were the end. In memory of all the grandmothers who left bread on windowsills and all the families they saved with their grace.